Dope. Towel is there, spoons are there. OBS is here. Cut into this. Dope. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. Today we're going to make a couple courses, just focusing on some fresh summer ingredients. I know that, well, at least where I live today, it's not so warm out, but like this food is kind of stuff that'd be perfect for, a really hot day out where you just want something that's not necessarily the heaviest, but like, we all like to eat. So I'm going to grab the ingredients real quick. One thing that I think could be good for cooking classes like this is just keeping all of your ingredients on one tray. Mind you, the chicken, which is for the second course, is not on this. And that's just because it's still in the fridge. We'll get there eventually. But yeah, as for now, we're going to start off by, we're just going to go through prep, kind of like everything else. We're going to start off by prepping out the soup. We're going to make that, chill it down. Then we're going to make the pesto, do all the garnishes. And then we're going to fire everything because cooking the chicken and, plating the soup is all stuff, to do very last minute. So for now, we'll take the watermelon. We'll grab a few tomatoes. And we are going to get rolling with all this. So again, watermelon and tomatoes first. We're also going to need some... I will grab the other garnishes in just a little bit. So, for the watermelon, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do this, right? We've all seen the way where, normally you cut it in half and then you can scoop it. We're going to take off the skin, and then we're going to use that, and then we're going to have just, like a big old piece of watermelon, and then we're going to dice up a little bit that we're going to use for garnish later on, and then the rest of it so it's a really good chance to actually practice some knife work. You don't always need precise cuts, and I think that like at times it almost can get overemphasized, but this is a good place to practice it. And if you have any off cuts, it's zero worries because anything that's extra is just going in a blender anyway. So if you have a miscut, who cares? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just take off the top and the bottom. So just have your watermelon like this. Cut it, spin it, and then you're trying to do your best to just make... And what this does is it creates a flat surface and then a starting point. So we're going to get rid of the core, the peel. But actually one thing that you could do with these that are really, really cool is you can actually take them on a mandolin, shave them really thin, cut them really small, and then pickle them. I actually really like using pickled watermelon rind. It's just food for thought. Again, like often what we think of as trash food or stuff that, we wouldn't really use is stuff that's, still has something awesome to offer us. And I should just keep chat's going to be right there. Dope. So next what we're going to do is with the watermelon is we're going to take the knife and we're going to place it at the top so we have this edge, and then we're going to kind of run along the edge of the watermelon trying to take off the core, but without taking off too much of the flesh. So here I did a pretty decent job. And again, you can see it right there. And then we're just going to move our knife ever so slightly further along on the watermelon, kind of overlapping ever so slightly, and repeating the process. And as you do this, if it's not perfect, it doesn't really care. It doesn't really matter. As you can see right here, there's like a little bit of extra. And what we'll do is at the end is after we kind of go through the entire watermelon, is we'll go back and we'll just clean up any like miscuts or any areas where we have extra. And if you dig a little bit more into the watermelon, it's also fine. This is definitely a bit of a learning process and a touch thing. And then the other thing is, if you do dig in a little bit too much, that just gives you nice little scraps for snackies. And who doesn't like that? So again, I'm going to go nice and slow through this. And again, if at any point anybody has any questions or comments, concerns, whatever, just let me know. The stream is about like kind of things appear a little bit. Things on the stream are about like half a minute to a minute behind where I am in real life. So that's why I'm going to be a little bit touching, like start and stop as I'm cooking. It's just so that way I can give a chance for people if there are any questions. So again, like as you can see, is I've now gone around the watermelon, and like there's a little bit right here where I dug in a little bit more than I would like, and there's these other areas where there's a little bit of the white of the rind still there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over to the other side, and what that'll do is that'll help give me a new perspective, because sometimes you miss a section of the rind because of just your hand was a little bit off in terms of how you're doing it. Sometimes you actually don't see what's going on. Again, you can't, like the knife is going away from you and onto the other side of the watermelon, so you can't always see exactly what you're doing. So flipping the watermelon the other way gives you just that little bit of perspective. All right, dope. All right, cool. I just have a little bit more rind right here. All right, awesome. So now we're going to dice up a little bit of watermelon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off a hunk, and that'll just give me a big flat surface for this to work on. And then again, this piece right here, that's destined for the blender. I'm actually not going to use all this. Some of this watermelon I'm going to wrap up and put away, have for later. But then I'm going to go through. I'm just going to cut planks. All right, so yay much. Then we're going to turn, set the planks flat. And then I'm actually going to square them off just a little bit. And again, all this scrap, I'm actually going to grab a bowl right now to keep my board a little bit more empty. And any scrap pieces are still good pieces because they can get made into the main soup body. So then what we're going to do is we're just going to cut lengthwise. I'm going to get rid of the excess here. And what that does is it leaves us with these nice rectangular pieces. And then we're going to go and cut against, we're going to cut them perpendicular, so then that way we have nice little cubes. And again, do these have to be perfect? No. Like in culinary school? Yes. In the real world? No. They're sitting in a soup. Nobody's going to like fish them out and look at them for, to see if every side is exactly the same. But again, like the closer you can get them to being the same size, the better and more professional it'll look. And it'll just kind of like elevate that food that little bit. So then what we're going to do is just take all of our nice little watermelon cubes and put them into a container, set them aside, And now we have a garnish for later on in life. Alright, dope. And take these, chuck these in the fridge. Now, just going to give the board a quick wipe because, again, watermelon has a lot of water in it, and it's just going to, you know, make your board filled with stuff. And, like, you always want to work in a clean setting. So then what we're going to do is we're going to just chunk up a bit more of the watermelon. And, you know, if you want to practice your knife skills, you can totally dice up the watermelon very finely. And then after it's all diced up, what you can do is, you know, just blend it like, you know, you would the chunked up stuff. I'm not going to bother with that. But it's totally an option if you want like a good place to just practice those skills. Yoink. Alright. Next up I'm gonna take the remaining piece of watermelon and I'm gonna put it away for later use for myself. What do I have? Yeah, baggy. Alright, dope. So next up, what we're going to do is I'm just going to take some tomatoes, and again, we're going to dice these guys up as well. Just going to cut off the end to get rid of the core. And again, I'm cutting these up just into rough chunks. You know, again, going in the blender doesn't really matter what it looks like. You know, especially if time is a factor for you. There's times to decide, you know, when you really need to take your time on something and be precise, and when you can just quickly bust through a task. And this is one where you can just like gun it. All right. So now we have a bowl of diced up watermelon and tomato. This is kind of the backbone of our soup. I'm going to grab some garlic, a cucumber, an onion. Then we're going to blend that with some bread and olive oil, and that's just going to be our broth. Incredibly simple. Now, I'm going to blend it super smooth, but you don't have to. I made this soup before where I kind of made it like roughly blended so there's still some texture to it. I thought that that'd be cool because it's, you know, closer to traditional gazpacho, but like, it wasn't the best in terms of how it turned out. At least in my opinion, texture-wise. Again, food's a learning process. You know, I screw up all the time. Like, you know, always things to learn and improve on. Alright, cool. So here we have, nobody's saying anything. Alright, cool. So here we have some basil, an onion, some garlic, and a cucumber. So I'm going to take the basil, stems and all, and I'm just going to roughly put my knife through it. Now, I'm not going to be precise with this at all because, again, all this is going to the blender. And I don't care about the stems and the fact that they're harder or more difficult to eat because this is going into a blender. And the one I have is really, really powerful, so it's going to just tear through it. Garlic, put my knife on top, put my hand on top of the knife, push down and smash. And again, right into there. And the garlic and onion are just there to really give depth to this. So then that way, you know, you have a more sophisticated flavor than just the tomato and watermelon. And then the onion, I'm probably only going to use half of this guy. The The other half I'll save for a future use. Again, I want a bit of onion in there for depth of flavor, but I don't want. But again, I don't want it to become overpowering. So I think a half onion will do the trick. But honestly, this is very much a kind of a touch thing and a very much a personal preference. So if in the end, if you're like, hey, you blend it and you're like, yeah, I want more onion, right on, man. You do you. Okay. So onion into the bowl. And then last up, again, real quick, give everything a wipe. Just constantly be cleaning. The more you're in a habit of that, the happier your world will be. So next up is the cucumber. We're just going to peel this, cut this. I'm going to cut out the seeds because of force of habit, but you don't have to. It's probably honestly overkill. And I always peel like this, going lengthwise, kind of towards me. Because I used to peel like this, but then I was working in a restaurant, and I had a chef come up to me and say, that's the limp dick way of peeling. Do you have a limp dick? Which, may be kind of harsh, but honestly, it didn't even really register to me, because that's just how kitchens are. And so my response was, no, chef, because in that restaurant, you say, yes, chef, no, chef, I don't know, chef. That's all I could say to my bosses while we were working. But ever since then, it's just been ingrained in me that I always peel going like this, and yeah, he he cracked that kind of dirty joke. But the reality is that peeling something going towards you the length, that's actually going to speed up the process. The reason being is because if you're gripping something midway down and peeling away from you like this, like so many people do, is you have to turn it back around and go back the other way. Whereas if you're peeling like this all the way down the length, you can get the entire length of the cucumber in one shot, and then you just maybe have to do just a bit of touch-up work at the top, and that's it. So again, the reason why he said the reason why he was very insistent on that is that it's faster, and when you're in a restaurant, speed is everything. Because again, if you're peeling a cucumber and you're doing it in an efficient way, who cares? But when you're peeling 3 cases of potatoes, that little bit of time between doing things the really, really efficient way or a slightly slower way, really takes impact. All right. So what we're going to do is, I'm cutting out the seeds, which is completely optional. You don't have to. Honestly, it really shouldn't matter because this is going to a blender. Just force a habit on my end. So what I did is I split it long ways, and then we had a half like this, and then went again. So you have nice little quarter pieces like this. And then I'm making an angle cut. I'm coming in right here and going down. And that'll just pop out the seeds while leaving everything else. Thus leaving you a nice piece of cucumber like this, easily de-seeded, and then you can just work with it. And you have just a nice piece of seeds with, not too much excess flesh attached to it. Do this with all 4 pieces. Alright, cool. I'm going to get rid of the excess. And now we're going to run our knives quickly through this. Again, I'm just rough chunking all of this up, right? So we have nice medium-sized pieces of cucumber. Throw this all into the bowl. And now one last thing, which is I'm just going to cut up a little bit of bread. I have a cheap baguette that's, not the best from Trader Joe's, but guess what, it'll work. And then the bread is just a thickener. Because again, the watermelon and tomato are just, they're going to turn into complete liquid once they're blended. So having, something like bread it'll add just like a little bit of, it'll thicken stuff. It'll add a little bit more depth of flavor, very subtly so, while still allowing the the freshness of the cucumber, the tomato, and the watermelon to be the forefront of the flavors. All right, cool. Right, go. So, next up, we're going to blend this. And again, if anybody has any questions as we're going, please let me know. Oh. All right. So we're going to take all of this, chuck it into the blender. Hopefully it'll all fit. If not, we'll do batches. We are definitely doing batches. No, it's gonna work. All right, one almost overfilled blender. And good question, where did my blender top go? It's not in the dishwasher. Give me half a second. I'm gonna find where the heck I put my blender top. Awesome. Blender top. So first I'm just going to blend it without bread. And I'm going to add just a little bit of olive oil. A heavy pinch of salt. And again, a heavy pinch of pepper. So now we're going to throw this on here. Give it a good smack. Grab a towel to put over the tops, and that way we don't make a mess. Make sure the blender is turned all the way down and not on high. And then let it rip. Alright, cool. So now, as you can see here, we have water. It's a little thicker than water, but you can see that it's still very thin. So we're just going to add in just a couple hunks of bread, blend that in to thicken it up. Then whatever's left over, I'm going to throw a little bit of olive oil on and snacks. Alright, cool. Whoa. Alright, dope. I'm going to blend this one more time. Let the bread just get in. Alright, dope. So now as you can see, we have this lovely, thick soup. Gonna give it a taste, adjust for seasonings. And this That's pretty darn good. I'm gonna add just a little bit more salt. Again, so with the salt, we're not trying to make this a salty soup. We are just trying to add enough to draw out the other flavors of everything that's in there. And I think a really good example of where you can see just the value of salt and adding enough to make something like truly taste of flavor is if you ever try making a hollandaise. Try making hollandaise without the salt. It tastes terrible. Then slowly add in salt and add a little pinch, taste it. Add a little pinch, taste it. Add a little pinch, taste it. And then you'll see that it's actually it's really good. And then if you keep doing that, it'll become salty and you'll ruin it. And I think that that's a really good example of just seeing what the power is. So I'm going to just blend this one more time. Not to thicken it, but to just mix everything. Alright, cool. So now I'm going to give this one more taste. And damn, yeah, that's really good. So now we're going to put the blender away. Alright, cool. And we are going to put this into containers. Now, later on, we're going to do steps to finish this dish off. If you just wanted to eat this right now, you could go ahead and do those steps. But again, I'm trying to show you how I would prep out a 2-course meal. And so if I were doing this again, I would make the soup base, put it away in the fridge, because right now it's stable. It's, sitting in the fridge, it's not going to lose any quality, even over a couple days. Alright. So I'm hungry and I want snacks. Alright. That row. So next up, we are going to make the pesto. But apparently I did not grab my food processor blade, but I see it. And this is going to be an incredibly straightforward, traditional pesto. And so also right now, I meant to do this earlier, turn on your ovens to 350 if you're cooking along. So that way we can toast some pine nuts. Or, actually I'll just do that on the range. So I'm going to grab the blade real quick. And, hey, there's, in my closet on high, there's a double cooker on a flat top. You could grab that. Thank you. Alright. This pesto is dope. Just, yeah, right here. Thank you. Okay. Alright, this pesto is going to be super straightforward and traditional. So step one, going to take a whole bunch of basil and just pop it right off the stem. In this case, unlike before where we had the blender that was incredibly powerful, if a little bit of the smaller parts of the stem, right here, gets in, it's not really a big deal. But if you have the thicker piece like this, it's not going to do well. So how much basil? I don't know, a metric fuck ton. It depends on how much pesto you want. And this is one of the things where you can make a small amount for what you're doing just right now, but it's almost just as much work as to make a massive amount of the stuff. And then you can just have it in your fridge and just have it for like other things. Heck, you can probably even freeze it. Like, the only thing you're really going to lose is maybe some color over time. So again, like, when I make sauces and stuff like that, I tend to make just really big batches. Just as in that way I don't have to make it again for a while if I want it for something else. And, so those little things that, like, help you have better food in life. Because often I feel like it comes down to a kind of a laziness factor of just like of how much work, like you're like, hey, I want food but I don't want to put in that much work. And I get that because like that's me all the time. When it comes to cooking for myself, I'm actually generally pretty lazy. So if I already have, from when I'm feeling motivated, if I already have like tasty sauces and yummy pickles in my fridge, then it's really easy for me to just throw stuff together that makes an amazing meal. But if I don't already have that there, then it's probably not going to happen. Like, for instance, my breakfast this morning was just microwaved oatmeal with some protein powder and some frozen berries. Like, nothing complicated, nothing sophisticated. Yummy, but still. Alright, cool. Yoink. Alright. So now that we have a massive amount of basil in here, we're just going to throw in some garlic, and we're going to grate in a massive amount of Pecorino Romano, let it rip, stream in some olive oil, season with maybe a little bit of pepper. We're not going to, maybe a tiny bit of salt, but probably not because there's already a lot of salt in the Pecorino Romano. And just a splash of lemon juice to give it that acidity to balance it off. But we don't want a lot in there because we don't want the acidity to ruin the color of the basil. So while this is going, other thing, sorry, I forgot real quick, is my oven should be about good right now. So we're going to take some pine nuts, just throw it into a pan, chuck them in the oven, just to toast them off. We'll let that go as we take in the garlic. Again, I'm just, you can crush it with your knife. I'm crushing it with my hand. Either way works. And then I'm just quickly running my knife through it. I'm not being too exact. Again, it's going to get pulled some in the food processor, but I kind of want to do this right now just to make sure that, like, there's no chance I end up with, like, really big, massive pieces of garlic. I found that, like, if you throw in whole cloves, that, like, you can run into problems at times where just, like, everything else is down to the texture you want, but the garlic isn't, which just kind of sucks. Then take the Pecorino Romano. Yoink. Or not. My knife hates me right now. And if you have the pre-grated Pecorino Romano, or Parm, nothing wrong with that. And again, like, as you can see here, like, I'm not doing exact measurements, and one that comes from a bit of experience. Like, I have a rough idea. Like, I've made a bunch of pestos in my life, so I have a rough idea of what a solid ratio is. But I also tend to like to go by taste a lot because I feel like that's kind of really the best indicator. Again, like, if you have a rough guideline, which is like you can put in, like about a cup or whatever. But then if you taste and you're like, hey, like I know that this needs more of the cheese, then add more of it. All right. Yoink. Dope. So I'm going to take that. We're just going to pulse, let it go, turn it on. So everything's like nicely chopped up. Add a piece of basil stem. Like again, this is why you want to be careful about basil stems. I missed this one, and it was just like big and didn't process. So easy enough to fish out and get rid of. So I'm going to grab the pine nuts now, add those in. These are just lightly toasted. All right, now I'm going to stream in the olive oil. Add a good pinch of pepper. So now I'm going to zest this lemon real quick. And then just add just a tiny bit of the juice. That's to give a nice balance. And again, like, I made this the other day, and like, for a private dinner I did, and like people were like, holy crap, this pesto is awesome. And I had trouble believing them, because I was like, I didn't do anything complicated, right? Like, there's nothing really sophisticated to this, and there's nothing that I'm doing here that's like, balancing of like amazing flavors. But also, like, I guess that's kind of what's cool about like Italian cuisine, which is like it's all about the simple. Just having good ingredients. I have a seed that fell in there. I'm just going to pick that out. You want to be really careful with lemons just to not let seeds get into your stuff, because those are incredibly bitter. And that's really bad because lemons are obviously sour, and sour accentuates bitterness. So it's just like this thing that compounds upon itself. So now we're just going to let this rip one last time. Dope. Give this a quick mix, because some of the stuff is on the edge. Like, it's on the edges of the processor. And then we're just going to give this a taste. It's really good. But it needs it actually needs a little bit of salt, a touch more lemon juice, and actually a touch more olive oil. But you can taste the basil, you can taste the pine nuts, and you can taste the cheese. Like, now I'm just going to grab another spoon from my trusty spoon bin. There we go. So now we're going to get rid of the food processor and move the basil into basil. And then we're going to move the pesto into a pint container or all right. And now our pasta sauce for our second course is done. Easy as that. And these are kind of the, and so meanwhile, if anybody, I don't know if anybody's cooking along this time. I know last time there were a couple people who were. Is the audio kicking in? So if you were cooking along, if you are cooking along this time, throw on a pot of water, and just get it hot for pasta in a little bit. Also, turn your ovens up to 450 degrees, so that way we can cook some chicken. Alright. Then, when you're scraping this, you really want to take your time to get as much of this as possible, because, you know, I mean, you worked hard to make this, so you don't want to, like, wash it down the sink. That would be sad. Alright, dope. So now pesto can go in a container, can go away. And again, we are going to clean up our cutting board, get rid of the extra stuff, pretend like nothing ever happened. Put the Pecorino Romano in. Alright, dope. So next up, we are going to cut some radishes and chiffon out some basil. These are both garnishes for the final dishes, and then our prep is done. We're moving into firing everything and, you know, getting ready to eat. So for the radishes, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can do it with the knife. Can't find my Mando, so we're going to do it with a knife. All right, cool. So we're just going to cut. So actually what I recommend is cutting right along this edge, super thin, so that way you have a flat surface to work on. Because otherwise what's going to happen is the radish is just going to roll on you, and it's going to be horrible and awful to cut. And you're going to sit there and be like, why, Julian? Why would you make me do something like that? So then just take your time. Run your knife against your finger. This is a good time to practice. And cut very thin pieces. You want to be careful as to make sure that your pieces are nice and thin. If you have a thick piece, like I had a slight off cut just now, you can use like to here, but you don't want to use this piece. And you want to be careful because the radish does have a bit of a kick to it. So then after we have like a nice stack of pieces, I'm just going to show you what we're going to do, and I'm going to go through like the rest of it pretty quick. Is we're going to turn it sideways, and then just stack them up, and then just cut them into nice thin strips. Right. So that's going to leave us with pieces like this. And what we're going to do with that, and we're going to put those into a container with a little bit of water. And you want these to be floating in water because otherwise they will oxidize and not be happy. So then again, I'm going to just keep processing this radish. The quicker way is to use a mandolin, which is something that I know not everybody has. I would recommend getting one at some point and then getting comfortable with it. Mandolins are scary to a lot of people because you can cut yourself with them. And when you do cut yourself with them, they are highly unpleasant cuts. Like, I know you're probably being like, well, getting cut is never fun. Yeah, true, but like, cuts from mandolins suck especially bad. And there's ways to be safe about it. A lot of people use like A lot of people use a knife guard, which is not something that I would recommend. My thing is that you don't hold something down with your fingers. So like if you have a mandolin, you run 1 or 2 cuts with something like this with your fingers down, and then you hold it by pushing your palm into it. And if you do that, and you have 5 fingers up to the sky, you will never cut yourself, ever. I had a chef teach me how to do that after I cut myself, and then cut an X across. Sorry, one sec. Okay, cool. All right. So now I'm just gonna cut the second radish. Honestly, 1 radish is enough garnish for like probably 4 people. But I'm extra, so we're gonna do that. So then again, we're just gonna cut nice thin strips. And I have a big old pile, and sometimes things get a little awkward and the piles slip. So if you need to like break it into 2 or 3 piles as to cut it, that's fine. All right, cool. So take the strips, put it in here. I want to get one of the purple ones because I think like the purple ends have like a very beautiful color and will give some wonderful contrast. So next up, we're going to cut the basil, and then we're going to move into firing everything. So we're just going to take a little bit of basil. We're going to take the leaves off, and this time we're going to go a little bit more intentional, really making sure that there's no stem on this. And the reason being is because we're going to roll these leaves up. You know, I'm not going to say like what, but anyway. So now we have all these guys, and so what we're going to do is we're just going to start stacking these one into another, into another. And so after you have, I'll probably do this in 2 goes. So after you have a nice pile of basil, and you can keep going, is you're just going to take it and you're going to roll it up into itself. Just super tight. So now you have like a nice tube of basil. And then take your knife and just take your time to cut strips. You kind of want to, you know, there's an instinct to go fast, but you really want to make sure that your knife goes all the way down and through. And what that does is it leaves you with these wonderful strips of basil. And we're going to put them into a cup container. And again, now that this herb is cut, this is very fragile. So I'm gonna process the rest of these basil leaves right here real quick. But then what we're going to do is we're going to take a paper towel. We are going to wring it out. We're going to wet it down, wring it out, and then put it on top. And what that'll do is that'll just help the basil live longer. Like I said, piece of paper towel. Doesn't even have to be a full one. Wet it down, wring it out. And then again, just right on top. And that'll just help it survive. Okay, so now we're just going to clean up. Can give everything a quick wipe. As always, get rid of the excess stuff we don't need. And we will need the cutting board again eventually, but we don't need it right now. We're just gonna need it when we finish cooking the chicken, because we're going to cut it to put it on top of the pasta. So now, I'm gonna grab an avocado. So now we're done. All of the prep work is actually, sorry, that's a lie. Haha. Actually, yeah, all the prep work is done. Everything else can be done in the fire. There's one other thing, which is we're going to oven roast a tomato. But we're going to cook that right along with the chicken, so you could pre-roast the oven roasted tomato if you wanted to, but it's by no means an obligation. So first we're going to plate up the soup, and then we're going to move into firing the chicken, right? Again, kind of the idea being is you can also stack any other courses with this. So for the soup, we're going to grab a bowl. We're going to take out the container of soup, container of radish, and container of basil. And then we also have an avocado right here. So the soup, give it a mix. And mind you, so we just made this, so it's going to taste fine. Like it's going to taste fine no matter what. The taste isn't going to change. But sometimes things settle in the fridge flavor-wise. So if, let's just say you made this the day before, you'll want to taste this to make sure it's good. So give it a good mix, because sometimes stuff settles to the bottom, it separates a little. Then you're just going to pour it right into the bowl. The other thing, watermelon. We're going to take some of our diced watermelon. And we are going to spoon that kind of around. Then the avocado. So we're going to take the watermelon, put that away. So then the avocado, we're going to cut it like an avocado. Take it, run your knife until it hits the pit. Then circle around. For those who don't know how to cut an avocado, take that. And then what we're going to do is, avocado in hand, knife in hand, is we're just going to run our knives gently through the avocado, not really pushing hard, because you don't want to pierce the skin because your hand's on the other side. But it should just glide through the avocado, especially if it's fresh. And then we're just going to kind of dice it within the skin. And then for each soup, I'd say you want maybe a quarter of avocado total. Then you're just going to take a spoon, run it through, and you'll see how it just comes out. And you can just drop that right in. So then you're going to take also a little bit of radish, sprinkle it around. And the radish is going to offer like a nice little bit of spiciness to kind of counterbalance the other flavors within this. And then we're just going to finish with just a small pile of basil and a little bit of olive oil. And then I don't know why I don't have a container right here. A bit of and then a bit of finishing salt. I happen to have black lava salt, but if you have flaky salt, that's amazing. We're going to put everything away now that this is all plated. And so then, whoa, why? Oh, that's so weird. Oh. One sec. Sorry, I now see that there are comments, but it didn't appear in my YouTube live stream thing. So weird. Give me half a second. Somebody has said something, but it's not appearing there. That is so weird. Oh, that's... Why can't I read that in the chat? Huh. So weird. Alright. Anyway, sorry. So anyway, so we have this lovely soup, who I have somebody patiently waiting for it, who I'm going to feed now. But yeah. So next up, we're going to put the avocado away, and we're going to move on to cooking the pasta. So one sec, got to go feed somebody. So apparently I'm out of spoons. I know, horrible. There you go. You're welcome. Let me know what you think. Be honest, though. Okay. All right, cool. So... Weird. All right, so Robert and Daniel, your chats just appeared. All right, cool. So next up, we are going to cook our pasta. So I already have some water back here that's been warming up, and what we're going to do is we are just going to bring it up, or apparently not. Apparently this pot is not loved. Alright. So, rolling with the punches, I'm just going to cook that on the back burner. Alright, fantastic. Alright, so I don't know why that pot's not working with my induction. That's life. So I have a big old pot of water, and I'm going to add just a lot of salt. It should... Yeah, that's good. Awesome. It should taste like the ocean. And the reason being is because this is your only chance to season, with the salted water, it's your only chance to season the noodles just, by themselves. You can season, we've already seasoned the pesto, we're going to season the chicken, we're going to season the tomato. But this is the only chance to season truly just the water. So... So we have that going. I'm going to grab my cutting board again, and we're just going to cut. We are going to cut tomato in half. Stick it in a pan, and then we're going to top it with just a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper. Like nothing complicated. Especially during this time of the year where you can get some really good tomatoes, I feel like you shouldn't mess with them too much. So just like this, hot oven, let it go while we do, and just let it go while we do everything else. Perfect recipe for like happiness and joy. In this case, I'm chucking them on the top of a broiler. All right. So the water is coming up to a boil. So meanwhile, we are going to season some chicken. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out a plate to season it on. And so in this case, I have a skinless chicken thigh. Is chicken better with the skin on? Hell yes. But on the other hand, it's a place where like I'm still vaguely trying to lose weight, and that's a place where I'll save the calories. But I would personally prefer to have the skin on. So I'm going to put salt and pepper on this. Same on the other side. Alright, cool. Beautiful. And then we're going to get our cast iron wicked hot. Just air on the side, just give it a little bit of time. And I'm going to wash my hands real quick, because I just touched raw chicken. So, as I wash my hands, one of the nice things about having a plate to season on is you can just remove the plate super easy, and then your chickeny surface is like no mas. All right, cool. So by the way, so last time I had my buddy Victor who said he would like to see duck on one of these in the future, which I will do. If there's anything in particular you would want to see in one of these live streams in the future, something you want to learn about cooking or see kind of like my interpretation of, let me know. I'd be happy to try to make that happen. These are these are just a lot of fun. And I'm still very much getting used to it. And again, like I can cook what I think's cool, but again, what's more important is is what y'all who are watching want to see and learn. Ooh, thank you. So once the pan's hot, we're going to put down a little bit of oil. You want to wait until the pan hottest to put down the oil, just so that way the oil doesn't burn and become nasty. And then we're going to put the chicken down, and you're going to hear it sizzle as we put it down. And as always, whenever you place proteins down, or anything into a hot pan, place it going away from you, so if there's any oil splatter, it doesn't splatter into you. Cool. So now chicken's going. I'm going to let it sear on the one side, and then I'm going to throw this under the broiler, just allowing the one side to truly, really render down. And kind of the reasoning behind that is this side, the side that's down in the pan right now, is going to be the presentation side. And I care a whole lot more about that looking pretty than the other side. I'll flip it at the end, and I'll make sure that it's cooked all the way through. But again, especially when something's going to be seen like this, because I know I'm going to plate this on top of the pasta, then you really want to be conscientious of that. You know, again, like a steak's a little bit different. And again, like the other thing is that this is also so thin that like I think that like if I throw it under a high broiler, that basically that it's gonna actually end up cooking pretty evenly. So I'm not gonna have to worry, because like the reason why you normally flip, especially like a bigger piece of protein, and you don't do it with that, is the problem is that like if you only cook like a steak on one side and didn't flip it, is that you would end up with a steak that's severely more cooked on the one side than the other, and that unequalness is just unpleasant and not good. So now I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to grab the handle with the towel, and one of the lessons that I learned in the kitchen is you should just assume every single handle is hot. So I had a chef who at one point told me that he actually worked with somebody who was trying to teach a cook that, and the cook kept grabbing pans by the raw handle. So the chef, this is really fucked up actually, the chef actually flipped a handle of a pan over a burner, turned that burner on, so then that way like the pan got super hot, and then flipped it back, and then the cook, you know, went and burnt the crap out of their hand, and it's really messed up. But the thing is that like in the end they probably by burning the cook minorly, they actually probably saved their cook from a much more severe one, which is really, really messed up. Again, kitchens are weird places in terms of like what happens. So now while this is cooking, chicken's cooking, we're gonna drop our pasta. Actually, I'm gonna give it a couple of minutes. The pasta I have is a high protein chickpea pasta, and that's not because it tastes better or whatever, and that it's purely for dietary reasons. You know, a lot of what I do is, you know, try to say how close can I get to eating this food while keeping within my diet, which is something that's actually kept it a lot more reasonable for me. But yeah, just kind of use whatever you want. If you made fresh pasta, that's going to cook a lot faster than the stuff I have here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to let the chicken cook, and we're going to have the pasta go, and then we're going to take the chicken out and we're going to let it rest on the cutting board, and then I'm going to finish off the pasta in the pan that has all those wonderful chicken juices, because why not? Not necessarily something you'd be able to actually do in a restaurant setting, but something like right here that works incredibly well. So OBS still broadcasting. All right, cool. Yeah. Oh, I see. Dope. All right. So again, I know right now it's, you know, like it's a little hands off, but again, like as you can see, like that first course was really easy to put out. The second one is the same thing, and if you can take these concepts of like prep and firing and understand how to break up your steps in a logical way, you can actually make it way easier to do multi-course meals or just bigger meals in general. Like for instance, another place where like understanding how to break this stuff up is really great is Thanksgiving, right? If you understand more of what you can do in advance or how you can like rewarm it, you can make your Thanksgiving meal a heck of a whole lot easier than it normally is. So I'm going to go and take a look at my chicken real quick. Beautiful, right? We can see that it's like nicely cooking. So we're just going to take it, give it a flip. You can see that there's like that nice sear right there. We're going to put it back in the oven and let it keep going, and then we are going to drop our pasta. Why do I use chicken thigh? Because chicken thigh is more delicious than chicken breast. The other reason I use chicken thigh is because I knew I was going to get boneless. Like any kind of boneless cut of chicken could work, but I knew I wanted to slice it and put it on top because I wanted this to be a meal, something where like you didn't really need a heavy duty knife to cut through anything. And again, in my opinion, thigh has a lot more flavor than chicken breast. And generally, I just eat way too much chicken breast throughout the week. All right, so I'm gonna chuck the pasta in the water. And then we're gonna let that go for a few minutes. One of the things, though, to be careful of about when you have pasta water when it's seasoned is if you let it go and boil for too long, which is generally not. This isn't a problem with home cooking, but it can potentially reduce and then become overly salty. Just something you need to watch out for. And if that happens, all you need to do is add a little bit more water because all that's happening with something reduced is the water is boiling off. Thus thickening or strengthening the flavors within it. Again, normally that's something you would do with like an unseasoned stock. You would reduce it to intensify the flavors. But again, with pasta water, you want it salted, but but if it becomes a salt bomb, it can make your pasta too salty. Again, it should kind of taste like ocean water, but not further than that. Alright, chicken has maybe another minute. Then we're going to put it on the cutting board and we're going to just kind of finish everything else off. The pasta, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a clove of garlic to saute. So again, there's already garlic in the pesto. But what we're going to do is we're just going to cook, and this is kind of just like a last minute audible. This wasn't actually something I was planning. Is we're just going to cook a little bit of garlic in that in the chicken fat that rendered off from the chicken thigh. Just really reinforcing that flavor within the final pasta. Just kind of giving that little bit more nuanced flavor. And that's the beautiful thing about cooking, which is there's no rules, which is if you have a good idea of the basics of cooking, is you can really, is you can just try different things, right? If you're like, hey, that sounds cool, give it a shot. Generally, the worst case scenario ain't that bad. All right, so I'm going to pull the chicken thigh out. You can see all that wonderfulness. All right. Give it a quick touch. Again, chicken is just like steak or any other protein where if you sear it and you cook it and you're going to cut it, you want to give it a couple minutes. So then I just have this on 3, so like medium low on the burner right now. Now I'm going to check my pasta real quick to see how that's doing. Beautiful. My noodles are cooked. So I'm going to take out the basil because we're going to use that to finish everything. And then we're also going to take out the pesto. Eek. So I'm going to turn this up just a little bit. Again, let the basil fry. Or basil garlic even. And then I'm going to grab just a tiny bit of pasta water. So what we're going to do is we're just going to chuck the pasta in. Just throw in just actually a little bit more than that. And so it just has a little, the pasta water. I'm going to let that cook. So I'm going to taste it real quick. And the salt levels on that are great. So I'm not going to add any salt to it, but I'm going to add a little bit of pepper. And then we're going to just spoon in. And then kind of what happens is sorry, the reason why I'm adding the pasta water is that between that and the fat that's in there, if you just kind of like let it warm, you'll see that it kind of like emulsifies and glazes the pasta really nicely. Like right now, this is tasty between the garlic, the leftover chicken flavors, and you know the pasta water. This is actually a tasty pasta as is. You know, especially if you just grated some Pecorino Romano on there, fucking on point. So now I'm just going to add a good chunk of basil. Just give it a toss. And all I'm trying to do with the basil is warm it up. I am not trying to cook it. Just coat it evenly. So I'm going to turn the heat off. I feel like it just needs just that, like I see just like a couple pieces that just don't quite have enough. So I'm going to add just a little bit more. And like this is just like a little bit tight. I want things a little bit looser. So I'm going to add just a little bit of pasta water. And again, like a lot of it is just like touch and just kind of seeing what you want. So again, as you can see, as the pasta water incorporates, it just kind of makes this like, it helps just make this like really creamy, nice sauce that like, it coats everything evenly, but it doesn't, but it's not like slopping all over the place, right? So now I'm just going to set this here. I'm going to get rid of my burners. And normally I would just do this all on the stove, but like, you know, it's easier to show this way. And now we're going to plate this up. No, this is, you know, this is enough for two. I'm just going to plate one real pretty, and then I'll plate one for myself in a minute. Going. Alright. So now we have like a nice bit of pasta in the middle, right? And again, like as you can see, like this right here is incredibly simplistic. And then we're going to take the tomato, which has been cooking in the oven this entire time. And look at how gorgeous this is, right? Again, very simple tomato, but just like let it rip in the oven. Not really doing much. Just going to take it, put it on the board, cut it once and a half diagonally. Salt the cut. Like 1, 2. And then we're just going to slice the chicken. Put that right on top. A little bit of olive oil. And so I keep forgetting to bring a container, just the tiniest bit of finishing salt. And I was just taught by a chef, just like if you slice something, you salt the cut. Usually that's referring to like steaks or something like that. But again, we have this like, very nice refined pasta dish it's not complicated, it's not sophisticated, but it is sophisticated. It's nuanced in flavor. You hungry still? Here, I'll grab you a fork and a knife. There you go. But yeah, so now I'm gonna make for me, but that's it. If you aren't already, please. So yeah, so I'm gonna try to do these again in the future. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this. If there's any kind of foods you want to see, let me know. I'd be happy to try to make that happen. I'm also doing, food videos fairly regularly. I just filmed a new one last night. I'm actually starting a series which is healthy foods that doesn't suck. Because I've lost a lot of weight and I'm in powerlifting, but I talk to a lot of people who are bodybuilders. And they always talk about how they go on these extreme cuts. And one of the things that really suffers is date night. Is that, while they're working to lose weight, they can't go out and have, something special because, it just violates, their diet completely. So I'm going to be starting this series of trying to make foods that, you can have in a more casual time. But it's also stuff that's more sophisticated, more nuanced, but that'll still work within a weight loss diet. Or if you're not trying to lose weight, you could just eat to be healthier. Or if you're trying to gain weight, you can just eat a bigger portion of it while having, better food for you in your system. So again, I'm going to sign off, but again, thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this, please give the stream a like. Let your friends know about this. Again, I love doing this. I love sharing food. And I'll be honest, the weirdest, most difficult part for me is the whole going out and being hey, you should watch this, so any help with that would be super, super greatly appreciated. Yeah, man, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And again, legit, if there's any kinds of foods you want to see, let me know. Again, the next one is the salmon salad. The one after that is going to be a seared tuna dish with, that's actually a plated dish that I would serve, in a restaurant. It's going to be served with romesco, sauteed quinoa that actually tastes good, and some asparagus. So it's going to be this very nuanced fish dish. I have a whole list of stuff, but again, last time, I said, my buddy Victor said he wanted to see duck, so I'm adding that to my to-do list, which which hadn't been on there, so I'll probably be doing a duck live stream. And also, just keep checking in on my channel because I will post these live streams generally about 5 days, if not more, in advance to me doing them. And I will always have an ingredient list, so if you ever want to cook along, you can. And that's kind of the whole point, which is I'm doing this, I'm explaining stuff, but it should hopefully be you're cooking along, and it should be basically a cooking lesson, but over the internet. Where if you have questions, I can just answer. If you're hey, I'm doing this as we're talking, this doesn't make sense, I can be yeah, okay, here's what you do. Anyway, again, thank you. End stream, and